Morning, everyone. So this morning we're starting a brand new series at church called Love Actually. That's right. For the next few weeks we're going to be talking together about the madness, the pain, the euphoria, the agony, the exhilaration of love. And I want to tell you that you're very lucky to be getting these talks from me. Because when it comes to the subject of love, I am a little bit of an expert. I'm basically the theological equivalent of Barry White. Now, I say all that tongue firmly in my cheek, of course, because if you're interested in learning about love, that's the kind of pretentious nonsense that you have to put up with. The author of every book that you read on the subject, the presenter of every television program that you watch on the subject, give you the impression that they really do know everything, and because they know everything, so can you. For example, this particular book is huge on Amazon. It's called For Men Only. So this book is written exclusively for men. And what grabbed me about this book was the subtitle. It's called, listen to this, A Straightforward Guide to the Inner Lives of Women. Now, call me cynical, but that seems like an oversell to me. My interest was piqued enough to look at the back cover. Wait till you hear this. This is brilliant. Men, do you find women complicated and impossible to understand? Do you love and want to please the woman in your life, but just can't seem to figure her out? Now in your fingertips is the tool that will unlock the secret to her mysterious ways. This simple map will guide you to loving your wife or girlfriend in the way she needs to be loved. Now let me see if I get this right, Mr. Book Author. Are you telling me if I read the 192 pages of your book, I will subsequently and simply understand everything there is to know about the female of the species? I think not. Here's another one. Brilliant. The 7 principles for making marriage work. Have you noticed, by the way, it's always 7? Why not 4? Surely that would be quicker. I'm busy. Anyway, the premise here is that the whole business of making sure your romantic life is more exhilaration and euphoria than it is pain and agony is a bit like baking a cake. There's just 7 things you've got to do, and if you do all these 7 things in the right way, hey presto, life will work brilliantly. And for me, these simple steps and easy to understand guides are nothing more than exercises in irresponsibility. Because surely life and love are neither simple nor easy. Surely, in fact, to talk about love is to talk about a wonderful madness. A madness that has intoxicated our species since the dawn of time. 2,500 years ago, Plato said that the God of love lives in a state of perpetual need. What Plato meant by that was that love for us is like hunger and thirst. It's one of those things about us that cannot be eradicated. It is an innate need. It is, he would say, the most addictive and crippling and astonishing sensation on earth. It is a narcotic without which the sorry years of our lives are made all the sorrier. This lady is Helen Fisher. She's a... welcome, we're talking about romantic love. You came at a good time. So this is Helen Fisher. She's a biological anthropologist, and Helen Fisher matters because her research is the science behind every dating site you've ever gone on. So if you found someone on Match.com, the reason you found that someone was because of Helen Fisher's scientific research. She spends her life looking at how love is experienced at a neurological level. In one fun experiment, she put people who were in the early stages of a romantic relationship into an MRI scanner, and she took images of their brain. And what she found was that the euphoria and excitement of new love shows up in a very deep, deep part of the brain called the reptilian core, a part of the brain that interestingly rewards us and punishes us. Interestingly, this is exactly the same part of the brain that kicks in when you experience a high from cocaine or something like that. So those sickly songwriters who say that love is a drug are correct. It registers in the brain in exactly the same way that cocaine does. In that same experiment, she also put people who'd just been dumped into an MRI scanner and took images of their brain, which I think is a rather cruel experiment. Hey, I know you've just been dumped, but could I take a photo of your brain? And guess what? She found out that rejection and heartache and grieving for lost love and all that nasty stuff register in exactly that same part of the brain. How cruel is our design? This is why the obsession of love often gets worse when love ends. If love is a drug, which it is, then the craving for lost love is profound. This scientifically explains why you can't stop thinking about that person after they've dumped you. Your brain is punishing you for not getting the love your brain wants. She also did exactly that same experiment on couples who were happily married, and she got exactly the same results. All of which points to Helen Fisher's famous conclusion. Love is the brain's greatest prize. We seek it, we crave it, we need it, we grieve for it after we lose it. Nothing, she says, matters to our brain more than this. It is not a pleasant addition to the life we live. It is a necessity without which we dare not live. Now, having said all of that, here is the disclaimer before I begin this series. When it comes to the whole business of love and love lost, I, of course, am not an expert. I can't help you understand the mind of a woman. I don't know how to translate Martian into Venetian and back again. I don't know 7 steps to a happy marriage, and I don't know any more about the science of love than what I've just told you. What I bring to the table is a retelling of the ancient stories in the Bible. And so for the next few weeks in church, I'm going to be taking you through a really fun book of the Bible called the Book of Ruth. And I like this story because it talks about love in a way that is far more realistic than the idealistic piffle you read that you buy on Amazon. It's got it all. It's got darkness, it's got pain, it's got desire, it's got hunger, it's got loss, and it even has a happy ending. So without further ado, let's get our first bit of the Bible up on the screen and we'll get to our business of learning. So I'm excited. This is fun. You excited? Good. Ruth chapter 1 verse 1. In the days when the judges ruled. So this is old Bible. This is early Iron Age. This is the bit of the Bible where the people in the Bible are figuring out how to live under God. Early in the story. We are told that there was a famine in the land. So this particular love story begins in a dark place. A place of economic hardship. And then the author takes us from a bird's eye view of what's going on in the economy into one particular home. We're told that a man from Bethlehem in Judah, together with his wife and 2 sons, went to live for a while in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, his wife's name was Naomi, and the names of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Ephrathites from Bethlehem in Judah. So notice, please, that the love story of Ruth begins with a series of unfortunate events. In fact, the whole story of Ruth is carried forward by a series of problems. Indeed, if there weren't problems in the story, there wouldn't be a story. Does that sound like anyone's life you know? No problems, no story. No difficulties, Nothing to tell you. And in this case, these problems are precipitated by a famine. And ironically, this famine is centred on the village of Bethlehem. And I say ironically because the word Bethlehem is a compound word. Bethlehem is made up of the Hebrew word Beit, meaning house, and Lechem, meaning bread. Bethlehem, Beit Lechem, literally means the house of bread. And the reason Bethlehem is called the house of bread is because it's in a part of the world where stuff grows. So much so that Bethlehem is one of the oldest villages there is. At the very dawn of the agricultural era, when our species first gave up the life of gathering nuts and chasing antelopes, Bethlehem was one of the first places they did it, because in Bethlehem, you know stuff's going to grow. In Bethlehem, in the house of bread, you know you're always going to have bread to eat. There's always going to be something in the table. In Bethlehem, you're always going to make it in Bethlehem in the ancient world. And yet in this story, there is no bread in the house of bread. There is no coffee in the coffee shop. There is no cars in the car dealership. In a life where there should absolutely be some of this, there is none of this. In a life where we should have this, we have none of it. And then straight away the story zooms in on the details of this family. There's a man, and there's his wife, and there's his two sons. And we get to know their names. And every night, these people sit around a table for dinner, but there is no dinner. And let's pause at this point in the story and ask a pertinent question about this family. Is it their fault? Is it their fault there's nothing to eat? Is it their fault there's no bread in the house of bread? Is it their fault they're living through a famine? Of course not. First lesson of the day, learn it well. Drum it into your head and accept it. Sometimes in this life, you get bad luck. Sometimes life doesn't work out for you. And it's not your fault. Then we're told that this family, down on their luck, leave their home in Bethlehem and go to Moab and live there. In other words, they become emigrants. Next slide. What you're looking at here is a German family, fresh off the boat in 1911 in Halifax. Now, we don't know anything historically about this family, but we can surmise that the reason they left Germany had something to do with what Germany was like. So in 1911, as you perhaps know, the nations of Europe are forming alliances with one another and against one another. These alliances were a direct response to the expansionism of the German Kaiser. And if you're an ordinary German living in 1911, in the latter days of the German Empire, the feeling you've got is that soon your country is going to be at war. And if you're a father with 3 young children living in the shadow of a looming European war, Canada's looking pretty good to you. And so here they are. And I like this image because in their faces I see a mixture of fear and hope. Theirs is the misfortune of living in the apprehension of pre-World War I Germany. And yet in this photo there's an upswing. There's new life, a new start, a new beginning, a new opportunity. And so too with the family in this morning's story. The bad luck of the famine, which wasn't their fault, is alleviated in this sentence by emigrating to a new country. And so when we read that they went to Moab and they lived there, we feel good at this point. They had bad luck and they did something about it. They had bad luck and they moved somewhere else, and there's optimism and there's enthusiasm. But as is so often the case in life, it is short-lived. Next sentence. Now Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. and she was left with her 2 sons. So in a cruel twist of fate, a family that has escaped economic hardship is now caught up in a worse outcome. A few things in this sentence worth pausing on and noting before we move on. First of all, the name of the husband and father in the story, Elimelech, means God is my king. And when you're drowning in bad luck, this raises the question of what kind of king he is. Is it that he can't prevent the bad luck that so ruins life? Or is it that he just chooses not to? Either way, the answer is terrifying. Furthermore, the wife and mother in this story has an equally ironic name. Naomi means pleasant. Such a happy name for such an unhappy woman. An unhappiness that is brilliantly described by that wee word at the end of the sentence. We are told that she was left. 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 This is the feeling you have deep in the brain when you lose love. How you lose it is immaterial. The feeling is always the same. Left. 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 Left craving for love, but none to give it. Gone. Let's ask another question at this point. Is it Naomi's fault that she has been left? Is it Naomi's fault that she is now bereft of a love that once meant the world to her? Second lesson of the day. Learn it. Learn it well. Accept it. Sometimes in love, just like in life, you have bad luck. Sometimes you have to come to a place where you look at the wreckage and say, this isn't good, but this isn't my fault. Sometimes the hand of fate is cruel, and we end up in the wrong place with the wrong person in the wrong circumstances at the wrong time. It's just bad luck. However, bad luck aside, in the next line we get another glimmer of hope, and we feel good for a moment. We are told that Naomi's sons married Moabite women, one named Orpah and the other Ruth. Now this is a nice sentence, I think, because there is nothing more hopeful than marriage. In the front row of every single wedding I've ever done, the faces always look the same. They are always faces of hope, of optimism and happiness. When a man and a woman get married, it doesn't matter what the past has been, with its pain and its struggle and its hardship. When a man and a woman get married, the bad luck and the bad decisions of yesterday don't matter anymore. All that matters is now. All that matters is today. And today is good. Today is new. Today is a day of optimism and promise and a better tomorrow. And for Naomi particularly, these marriages bring the promise of grandchildren. They bring the promise of a better tomorrow that will maybe undo some of the pain of yesterday. I mean, Naomi's had a hard life, but maybe now her bad luck is gone. Maybe things will get better from here on in. Next sentence. After they'd lived there about 10 years, both her sons, Mahlon and Chilion, also died. And Naomi was left without her 2 sons and her husband. So man, you're only 5 sentences into the story and already you're getting the pathos. You're feeling this woman's plight. She just can't get a break. And nor, it seems, can her 2 daughters-in-law, who've just lost their husbands. What kind of husbands they've lost is something that we might want to talk about. When the writer of this story says that Naomi's sons married these women, he does not use the normal Hebrew word for married. Normally in Hebrew we would expect him to say that they took a wife. However, in this story, for some reason, he says that they carried a wife. Carried in the caveman sense. So, I don't know what happened. Maybe they clubbed these women over the head. They were dragged into a marriage that was less than ideal. They were dragged into a marriage that maybe wasn't all that great. The writer is certainly telling us something of that nature. And so once again, we're back to bad luck. These two widows who've been married for 10 years, just like their mother-in-law, are victims of it. It happens. And it happens in circumstances far less grave than death and disease. When it comes to the whole business of love and romance and marriage, sometimes you're just unlucky in your choices. The fact is, when you got together with that person in those circumstances, for those reasons at that time, you did so with the best of intentions. And there's no way on earth you could have predicted how life would have turned out. It's just bad luck. That's all. It could not have been foreseen. Then in the next sentence, we get another swing of optimism. We're told that when Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had come to the aid of his people by providing food for them, she and her daughters-in-law prepared to return home from there. So it seems that there is once again bread in the house of bread. This is good news. However, when good news comes at the wrong time, it serves to remind you how unlucky you have been. I mean, if I were Naomi, living in Moab, having gone through all of the things that she had gone through, and I had heard that God had come to the aid of his people, I'd be like, well, all right, that's nice, but what about 10 years ago? What about all those hungry nights that we went through? What about back then? What about my dead husband? What about my dead sons? I mean, if you'd come to the aid of your people back then, we would never have had to go through any of the things we've gone through. My husband might still have been alive. My sons might still have been alive. I might have had a far better past than the last 10 years gave me. Do you know what I mean? This is a bit like someone who endures a lifetime of poverty and on their 88th birthday win the lottery and die the next day. And don't get me wrong, it's nice to win, but 40 years ago would have been even nicer. Anyway, beggars can't be choosers. Next sentence, with her two daughters-in-law, she left the place where she had been living and set out on the road that would take them back to the land of Judah. So in this sentence, we get some movement. We get a leaving and we get a going. And I highlight this because when you go through a period of bad luck, and it gets to a point where even your bad luck runs out, you lose confidence. And this, I think, is particularly true in things like, I suppose it's true in every area of life. When things don't work and you get down on your luck, you can easily persuade yourself into thinking that that's who you are now. And that's the way your life is now. You are forever unlucky and you are forever stuck. And so therefore, why even try? And the negative events of your life become cemented in your self-worth. So let's ask ourselves a liberating question. Are you stuck in bad luck? Are you really stuck? Is it not in fact possible for you to take a step in a different direction? Let me tell you something. I suppose this is true in relationships, and I think it's certainly true in every area of life. There is nothing success loves more than movement. There is nothing happiness loves more than movement. There is nothing luck loves more than movement. If you don't like where you are today, don't move. Take a movement, take a chance, take a movement, take a chance. You never know. You never know. I'm not talking about relationships when I say that, as will become clear at the end. Is there any reason why you can't make yourself luckier? Is there any reason why you can't get the life you want? And I like what this woman does in this sentence. It's inspiring for me. In it, a woman says, where I am today is horrible, absolutely horrible, so I may as well not stay where I am today. I may as well go somewhere else. I may as well move. I may as well put one foot in front of the other and see where it takes me. Then, not long into her journey, Naomi says to her two daughters-in-law, "Go back, each of you, to your mother's home. May the Lord show you kindness as you have shown kindness to your dead husbands and to me. May the Lord grant that each of you will find rest in the home of another man." So Naomi, she's the old wise woman in the story, and she knows that her two daughters-in-law, who are not from Bethlehem, will probably have a little bit of a struggle when they get there. And so she says, "Look, guys, you owe me nothing. You're still young. You've still got your looks. You've still got your whole lives ahead of you. Go home. Start again. Find someone new, make a new life, raise a family, enjoy yourself. This is tough love." She's saying, there's no future coming with me. I don't want that life for you. So go find something else, find someone else, and God bless you. Then she kisses them goodbye. They all cry, and they say to her, no, we'll stay with you. We'll go back with you to your people. They don't want to leave this old woman on her own, and that's nice. But Naomi insists in verse 11 and says, "No, return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? Am I going to have any more sons who would become your husbands? Return home, my daughters. I am too old to have another husband. Even if I thought there was still hope for me, even if I had a husband tonight and gave birth to sons, would you wait until they grew up?" I'm getting creeped out a bit now. "Would you remain unmarried for them?" Now that's a complicated sentence, and I'll get into it in a few weeks. It's quite important for the story and quite important for Easter, which this series leads up to. But for now, let me say this. This sentence is one of those kind things that older people sometimes say to younger people. Please don't be stupid. Please don't do what I did. Don't be who I am. My fate is fixed now. I'm old. What do you want? But yours is not. You're still young. Make better choices. It's nice. This is the wisdom of age. Life moves on, and so it must. So you may as well make the most of it and be happy. Then she says, "No, my daughters, it is more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord's hand has turned against me." So there you go, I'm right. When I said earlier that if I was this woman, I'd be bitter, I was right to say that. She is very clear in her head about the cause of all her troubles. When she looks back at the famine and the death and the grief and the loss of love, she knows exactly how she feels about it. She feels that God could have given her a better yesterday, but he didn't. He could have given her a better economy to live in, but he didn't. Could have given her a healthier husband, but he didn't. Could have given her healthier sons, but he didn't. Could have made her happier, but he didn't. In her head, there was no reason whatsoever why her life should have been an endless succession of painful problems. And so her argument is, girls, don't hang around me because the God I believe in has marked me for difficulty. I've just got bad luck. And if you hang around me, bad luck might rub off on you. So please go home. We see her cynicism had some effect. At this they cried again, then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye. At which point we as readers of the story are thinking to ourselves, smart move, girl, smart move. I mean, there's no point hanging out with this old lady. Your husband's dead. There's nothing for you where she's going. Go somewhere else, get someone else, get a new life. Smart decision, absolutely. Don't stay in pain. Life is short. May as well be happy. But then we read that Ruth, the main character in the story, clung to her. Look, Naomi said, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. Interesting theology. One we all in our own way often find ourselves slipping into. Naomi, the Bible believer, says that her God, the God of the Bible, has done nothing for her. So you may as well go back to your gods, and maybe you'll have better luck with them. Then we hear Ruth speak. And what she speaks are among, for me, the most memorable words in the Bible. She says this: "Don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, your God will be my God. Where you die, I will die, and there will I be buried. May the Lord deal with me ever so severely, if even death separates me from you." Now, those of you who chat to me about such things will know that I have enormous sympathy for the human condition. How could I not? You know that when life and love go wrong and descend into dark and disappointing places, that you find in me a very non-judgmental and non-condescending ear. I believe with all my heart that failed relationships in the past do not and should not preclude against highly successful relationships in the future. I believe with all my heart that things can be better tomorrow than they were yesterday, and that betterment can be embraced. However, those beliefs are in my heart, as they are in the Bible, nothing more than a concession to the realities of life. But this verse, this ancient and deep bit of the Bible, speaks to an ideal that I think is worth celebrating and preserving. When she is told that a better life is to be found elsewhere, Ruth appears to say, well, yeah, of course that's true. There is always a better life to be found somewhere else. Just like there's probably always a better love to be found somewhere else. To say that that is true is a truism. But the truth of it is immaterial. Ruth says, I have made a commitment. And to that commitment, I will be true. Regardless of bad luck, regardless of the present situation, I will journey with you. And in that journey, I will of course hope for the best. But I will not allow the certainty of a better life elsewhere to nullify one iota of the commitment that I have made to you. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Where you fall, I will fall. Regardless of what happens. Now that's something, isn't it? But there's something even more amazing in relationships, and what that is, I'll tell you next week. Thanks for coming. God bless you. See you next Sunday.